So today we've got special guest Alex, who's a playtester on Avallen and the chap that got me into D&D and Magic the Gathering in the first place.
Yep.
And today we are going to be working on magic items, I think. So we're currently developing a sourcebook for our Celtic world of Avallen, which you can see here. Recently have a campaign book that's coming out against the Faerie Queen. And our next project is going to be a source book for our Celtic World of Avallen. And because Alex is here, we thought we would try and just do a topic that we could just brainstorm random things together.
Good at random. I'm very good at random.
Including chat. Oh, good one from Canada. Hey, Zilfia.
Oh, I love Canada.
Wait, where in Canada? You must be East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's like 8, 7 and 14 in the morning in Canada, maybe. So if you're on the East Coast, anyway, Toronto or whatever, don't dox yourself, as I always say. But yeah, welcome to the chat. And as we design stuff, you can also help us design stuff, and there's a good chance.
So
we try.
Go on, sorry, Kurt.
Oh yeah, we also if someone puts in an idea that we're like, oh, we're gonna use that, we do try to write it down so we can give you a shout out later.
Yeah, for sure.
So you know, it's all good fun. It's all about making stuff up. And what did you pull up here? You put up the heist items.
Yeah, so I think today a good thing to just brainstorm random ideas with is we could make some magic legendary items. We could use Alex's random ideas, but then we could tie them into the world lore.
So let's set the stage a little bit. And in the chat, if you're not sure, again, we're designing for the game Legends of Avallen, which is our own system and also 5e compatible, and it's based on Welsh Celtic mythology. And also, as a role-playing game, we all have sort of our backgrounds with like what magical items are. So why don't we take like 5 minutes or so and talk about our experience with like magical items in games?
True. Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid, here's the thing, I played D&D from a young age. I was probably like 9 or 10 when I played them, and I fucking loved the Dungeon Master's Guide, 2nd edition. That was my first thing, and I fucking loved the deck of magical things and girders that change your gender and all this shit. And I remember reading Lord of the Rings as a kid, and I was like, man, this one ring is like super whack. Let's just make
It's OP.
Well, it's not OP because it's just like a ring of invisibility, right? Like
True,
compared to like D&D, it's just like a cursed ring of invisibility, so it didn't seem that great. I understand it more now and the nuance, but I always loved magical items, but I always GM'd and I never got to use magical items. But I always loved them in the abstract as what you're talking about, right? Like these kind of fucking weird stories, and the weirder they were, the better. So I really liked weird magical items. But like, what was your experience with like magical items in role-playing games and such?
Right, I should go first. Well, can you remember your first magical item or your first like?
See, I remember. I think in terms of magical items, it was video games was what really got me, and it was always the color. You know, you got one type of rarity, and you were like, oh, but I got the taste, and I want the next one now. I want a blue, and then I want a purple, and then I think as I got older, I like the nicheness of an item. I like an item that's got a really niche, specific use, and you basically spend your time waiting for that one niche moment. You're like, this is it. This is the moment I've waited for, and then you get to sort of like use it to its full prowess. I think that's what I like the most about magical items, but. I've not had the best of luck actually with magical items in my Legend of Avallen playing, because I've actually been using in our playing. I've been using one of the shields in the playtesting, and by pure chance, every time I go into combat, the GM breaks it.
I don't break
every combat before I get a chance to use its abilities. So I sit there, I'm like, this shield's going to be so good. I'm going to use it to advantage the team. Now that I just get unlucky rolls and it just gets blown up in the first round of combat.
Draws in the case of Avallen, right? Do you repair it every time?
Hold that thought. I want to welcome some people in the chat. So
please,
we got Zilfia, Ontario. Yep, 7 a.m. and at work. Nice. We're hoping to catch people at work in the morning. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
This is the real work.
Yeah. And then Halepa. Some of the Celtic rituals are still traditional in Germany. Awesome. Like the Easter fire.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter. We burn so the souls can use the smoke to guide to heaven.
No
That's
way.
so cool. Love to hear that. Sylvia, I wish I had studied more about Welsh myths and legends. Studied loads about the Irish side of things. Yeah, Wales is like kind of a bit underrepresented in the zeitgeist, right? So we're trying to fill that niche and push that out there. And please let us know if both of you have any experience with your favorite memories of learning about magical items growing up? Because we're all fantasy nerds here, right? They've probably been from
Yeah,
games
yeah.
or board games or role-playing games or movies or books. Yeah.
I love and especially with the Welsh stuff, I do love. I mean, I want to learn Welsh because it's such a beautiful sounding language, and the poetry looks so awesome. And when I read it or see it, it's like so good. But I can't like understand it on that level, and I kind of regret that. I wish I could. It's but the forms and stuff. I love studying the poetry and the forms and the things that they use, and I can understand it from like a, like, oh wow, from a
Like almost like a geometric perspective, like as in like a syntactical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I translate everything and I can understand it, I can appreciate it on that level. But I'm sure there's so many levels that one misses if you're not a native speaker of the language, right? But shogunai, as we might say in Japan, it can't be helped. So yeah, magical items. So that would be a cool magical item, a something that you burn and then it guides souls to heaven. And also says that they created a magical hammer called Winegeist, and it could damage ghosts and level the amount of alcohol it was fed. That's a fun item.
Wait, what's that again? It could damage ghosts and level with the amount of alcohol it was fed. As in, like, the more beverage you put in this
the wine guy, yeah.
It would take levels away from people because it would make them drunk, essentially. Is that what you're saying?
Wait, is it the drunker you are or the drunker the hammer is? Because both are dope.
I don't know, but I want to find out.
See, in my mind right now, this is like a steampunk hammer that you're literally pouring alcohol into, and it's like chugging it up like a machine, like dealing with the alcohol.
That's badass. I like that idea too.
Yeah, Zilphia says the classic, the cursed ring of gender bend that always calls the best cows. Yeah, I think you even mentioned that earlier, Kurt, right?
Yeah. There was a great... Sorry, I want to get back to Darren about what your experience with magical items is, but... there's a great magical early into playing. There was a great Dragon magazine article. I think it was like 1995 or 96, and it talked about best use cases for cursed magical items, such as that gender bending ring. And so it just gave you ideas about the worst items and how to use them fruitfully as an adventure kind of thing.
Yeah.
So things like how to like use the gender bending to your advantage as a spy.
Right. Take the cursed item and turn it into like
turn it into a benefit. Yeah, how to use it as a benefit. So that was
that's a cool idea. Like if you get like a ring that turns you into a rabbit, it's like that sounds like a bad thing, but that could easily be a good thing.
Yeah, depending on the context. So it gave you the context for like crappy items and how to make them good. And that was an article I liked quite a bit when I was a kid too, because I like weird items. So Darren, how about you? What's your first magical item that you fucking love?
I think my first introduction to them, I think, would be books or Diablo 1. So I might have had a similar experience to Alex, where finding things on the floor and the color makes a difference, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I didn't play that game much because it terrified me as a kid. Because it's super dark and there's zombies and skeletons in the dark, and that's not...
Wait, which game? Which game terrified you?
Diablo 1.
Diablo 1. Oh, sorry, Diablo 1. Okay, sorry,
yeah.
I got you.
Thinking about it now, I think the magic items I really remember most as a kid is twofold. One is the alethiometer from his Dark Materials trilogy. Philip Pullman. So you might know it as the golden compass. Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. It's like a compass, but it has like tarot symbols and different symbols along the side, and then that the hour and minute hand kind of move around, and where they lie give you the truthful answer to a question that you ask. But you have to interpret the answer using the symbols, and that itself is a skill that has to be mastered, learning how to read it based on the symbols, what they represent, and the different nuances to them, that kind of thing, right?
So it's a get good magical item.
Yeah, you have to get good to use it, yeah. And then the other ones I really remember as a kid as well is from another awesome book series called Sabriel and Lariel and Abhorsen. These was a world where the main character was a necromancer, but not in like the raise the dead necromancer, but put the dead to rest kind of necromancer. And they had bells, and the bells were so cool, dude. I never thought bells could be so cool. They wore like a strap, like a satchel with different sized bells on them, and they each had like intricate carvings on them, and they each have a different power and purpose when it comes to like binding and desummoning spirits, where the large bell would have the most power to it, and you'd rarely ever ring it because its effect was so huge, but if you're desperate, you might want to do that. The little one could suddenly control things. You'd set up like, I can't remember because I'm so young, but I remember just thinking, they're so freaking cool. And then as I'm older, I'm like, wait, they're just bells. But as a kid, I was like, these bells are like the coolest shit in the universe. And it's been stuck in my head ever since, and I included it in Against the Fairy Queen. In fact, I guess I can bring that up now while we're talking.
Spoiler. Yeah. So yeah, and you never know, and it's kind of what Alex was mentioning too, right? You don't know what you'll sort of catch on and latch onto, right? And what will make you sort of like fire that thing in you, or let you catch that fire and drives you to want it and to covet it and to want to use it. And that's something that's almost.
Is that 100?
Yeah, magic. It's kind of magic. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing.
So,
yeah,
so completely inspired by that. This is a character from Against the Fairy Queen. She summons spirits, and then I gave her bells of different sizes entirely because of that book. But the bells here are more East Asian inspired because of her background and things like that. So it all got tied together to make something new. But I totally had the bells there because, I mean, bells are quite spiritual in the East as well anyway, aren't they? Like you ring bells at New Year's to honor the spirits, that kind of thing, don't you?
Yeah, actually, my son, Ren, he's 4 years old, and he's really into the cartoon Turning Red right now. And there's a scene in it where they hit a bell and they go dong bai shong ja. So he'll do that to the rice cooker, and he'll like hit the rice cooking pot and start singing that song and hitting it. So yeah, it's in the culture here in Japan. It's part of it's Asian. Everyone loves it.
So I was really pleased when I wanted to give this character bells because of the story that I read as a kid that I loved, and then the character happened to be Asian coded or inspired, and then realizing there's a connection there. So
what's the name of the story again? For what story is that from?
Sabriel. Sabriel. Sabriel, and then Lariel, and then Orson. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's one of those books where part of the world is modern. I know there's a divide. There's like a wall divide of like the fantasy world and the modern world. She grows up in like an orphanage in the south, and then crosses over to the border and learns that she is.
Yeah, I see the book cover here, and yeah, the art. Do you remember the art?
I remember there being a symbol on the front for my books.
Oh yeah, the one I'm looking at, it has like it's like a girl or a female with things in the back, and it had an unsheathed sword and bells on her belt.
Oh yeah, she had a sword as well. But dude, see how cool is that? So she has a sword. The sword is also badass, but I don't remember it because the bells are cooler.
Yeah, the bells are more...
Yeah, why are bells cooler? I don't know. It's different, I guess. Everyone has a sword, right?
Yeah. Holipa says, sorry. Hoilipa, or Hoi says that a necromancer in my games got a flying skull as Familia, who fired magic spells for him. Oh, that's always fun. Yeah, that's the flying floating skull thing. I love the floating skull trope. That was a popular one too in Torment. I think that was in Torment as well, right? That was in the Planescape version of. I don't know if you're familiar with that game, Torment. It's like the Planescape.
Oh yeah, Planescape. I'm familiar with it, but I didn't play it. It's basically another Baldur's Gate. Same kind of time period kind of game. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, now we know where we are all at with what we like about magical items. But Alex, you're the guest today, so I think we'll let you we'll pick your brain, your skull.
Actually, I'm gonna steal his brain because he had an idea earlier that I don't think he's realized an idea yet. I was talking to him about what we did in last stream with the pen levy and the skull writing culture, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which I thought was awesome. And then he said, well, tell me what you said.
Oh, by pure chance, I don't even know what I was reading up on yesterday, but I read about a skull that in the 16th century in Germany, they would have to hold when they were swearing their oaths to say they were going to basically speak the truth during trial. By pure chance, and of course, by pure fluke, it obviously links up very heavily with all of this. But it was just, I just couldn't believe the odds that we would both be talking about skulls in such a quick succession.
So they told me about it, and then we looked it up, and we found this, which is, I guess, one example of them. I don't know if this is that skull particularly, but searching for skulls with carvings on.
Cool.
Yeah, and I was like, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, something to keep in mind in terms of the how do you say, the culture of Avallen in our game is that writing is relatively new to the Valak culture, which is our equivalent of the Celtic culture, and that writing, but it is something from the Roman culture, or the Raxians, as we call it in our world. So do you imagine that if we were to make something, it would be a Valak artifact or a Raxian artifact, like Celtic inspired artifact or Roman?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think.
And we have a comment in chat from Zilfia, and they're asking, you guys intend on implementing magical items that represent aspects of the in real life world gods or the Avallen gods? So you want to field that question, Darren? I think so, yeah. In the Sourcebook, definitely there will be representations of things that we've read or that we find from books and so on. But I think when we're creating stuff like this, it'll always be a mix of inspiration, both from the things that inspire us from what we read, and also from things that inspire us just by working on the game and trying to be novel. But what's your take on that question?
Yeah, I think there's the top-down design and bottom-up design, right? I think at least for this stream right now, what I want to do is just create some awesome magic items and then see how we can tie them into the lore and then hope that it also creates new lore through that. But 100% when it comes down to it, because the source book is going to be kind of faction based. We want there to be a Penkaur section and a Pendrag section and a section for the Everstranger, one of our gods, right? And so I imagine we'd want to tie in items that are particular to that culture or that faction or that deity. So yeah, that'll definitely be a thing. Yeah.
One item we came up with against Faerie Queen was obviously inspired by Arthurian, Excalibur, obviously, which is the most famous sword in history.
Yeah.
But it also had its own things that sort of got inspired by the lore of the world itself and how that's developing, right? Like the fact that it was a separated hilt from the sword, but it would shoot fucking fires out of it because it was like a drag inspired by the dregs that the Everfather, the god who made it, is aligned with, kind of thing, and who he killed. So there's different ways to there it is. Yeah. Like
I think it's known. So I know the Welsh name now more than the bloody English one. There's Excalibur, and then there's the other sword. And I know in Guild Wars 2 it's called Khaled Bolg, and then maybe it's just Excalibur. I forget, but anyway, Welsh is called Khaled Volk.
Khaled Volk. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the flaming sword that blinds your enemies when the dragons breathe the fire upon it. That's all from the Welsh legends. Yeah.
And also, our game company is actually just called Adderstone Games. So an Adderstone is also a magical item. Okay, so you guys are thinking. So we're talking about a skull. So it's something that you use for truth telling and like education of events, and it's kind of like a popular cultural thing. Is that the sort of inspiration?
So are we starting with a skull then? Let's just make a skull.
If that's something you vibe with Alex. If
Alex, do you want to make a skull?
Do it. Okay.
Let's do magic skull because we're here.
We have to link to the pen levy, surely.
Probably, yeah.
So for designing, so last week on the stream we came up with this idea that after their lands were kind of put into a waste, because of the Mukulevi, which is the Feithra, the giant demon creature that used to rule the land.
Yeah.
It makes sense that the culture that is most prone toward taking heads, the sort of taking heads for power tribe, where that sort of classic trope is sort of funneled into, that they would also find ways to use it in their culture if they get a lot of them. And we came up with this idea that there's like skulls that act as waypoints and like trophy, like how would you describe it? Trophy mounds that both act as representations of the heads they've taken and also as like stories and libraries as they sort of write
history. Because when you have possession, you often might want to carve things on it to represent where it came from, when you got it, who owns it, and that becomes history in on itself.
Yeah. But now we're saying that not only that, but occasionally a skull of a particularly worthy enemy or someone, a magic user, could turn into a powerful artifact of some sort.
Yeah, so actually, funny enough, I mean, Alex, you can explain. This is slight spoilers for Against the Faerie Queen campaign book. But you have a magic skull right now, don't you?
Oh, we do.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's in the. That's right. It's I remember that now.
I don't know how much should we say. I mean, I don't want to spoil it.
I guess you say what it can do, not who it is
or
what it is. Yeah.
So basically, it's a skull that you can commune with, and when you do this, you kind of like astral project, I suppose. You get like a ghost version of yourself with all of your items, but of course, you interact with the world very, very differently when you're in ghost form than you would in your physical normal form, which as a party has landed us in some trouble at times when we've misused it slightly. But yeah, it's been really, really cool actually, because it's allowed us to interact with things in a very different way, which I think that's the nice thing, isn't it, with magical items, is sometimes they can change how you play the game. One item can literally change everything. I think that's the beauty of some of them, and I think that Skull's one of those things. But yeah, I'm interested to see what we do.
Yeah, so it's funny because we're talking about now what theme ideas you might have with the Skull, and you said knowledge, and I thought death. And then I remember we have the Skull already, and it does both of those things. It has a spirit of a being inside it that bestows knowledge upon the party, and it also gives you a mastery over death. So maybe we've already covered Skulls. Maybe this is like the perfect, the
closing the loop.
Yeah, the platonic magic skull.
It would be cool though, because obviously these were a big thing for. It was the fact that you place your hand on it and you swore your oath, and it was the fact that you honor the dead so much that by holding this you couldn't betray them by lying.
Yeah.
So I mean,
ancestry.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe that's because obviously the Penlevy they revere death. You know, they have a great respect for it, and maybe, you know, if you wanted to have another skull, maybe that's what it does. It has an aura where basically any sort of, I don't know, shape-shifting or any lying that you do around it, the skull does something to alert the fact that something's not being honest.
Yeah.
And in a way of, you know, because obviously there's shapeshifters and it's very easy to lie and manipulate. But actually maybe the skull has some means of you know, that saying, no, the dead know that you're lying.
Hoylepa, you're from Germany, right? Do you know what skulls we're talking about? These oath-swearing skulls used in courts and trials with carvings of them? We've heard it's a German thing, but we don't know for sure.
If you're still in the chat, I know people will probably be going in and out. Yeah. But I do think too that actually it reminds me a bit of Hamlet, right? Hamlet picks up the skull of poor Yorick, who used to be a jester, who are traditionally, they tell the truth, right? Jesters take the role of a person that reveals the truth but can't be killed because that's that's a rule. And he continues to reveal truth to Hamlet by showing him the reality of death and so on. So I love this idea somehow of tying it to parlay, right? Maybe it gives you an advantage in parlay somehow. Yeah. Like maybe it's specifically a skull that. Okay, we could use it in the way you're talking, which is like if someone swears on it and binds them. Yeah. But if there's no binding, perhaps it could also be something that like gives you an advantage in a social interaction with either the Penlevy or someone in a situation. That could be interesting.
I kind of really like both of those ideas. Like imagine if there's this item that everyone agrees to put their hand on it. And then throughout that conversation, you know that everyone's being honest. Like no one can lie in that conversation. It's always truthful, and there's a power in that, right? Like it's a pact you get into. But then also the fact that it's a mythical or legendary item with the Penlevy. The fact that you have that grants you respect in the people because you must have got it through some honourable means. Otherwise, it wouldn't work for you. There's a lot of in the Welsh legends. There's a lot of the items only work for honourable people. They like, and they often use that to prove their honor. Like they have a cauldron that can boil meat in like 30 seconds. It's basically a microwave. it's basically I hadn't thought about that till now, but it's basically a microwave. It boils meat really quickly, but it will only boil for an honorable warrior. And you can use that to find out if other people are honorable because it won't work for them.
Yeah,
so a bunch of things like that. Yeah, it
was like an honorable warrior that paid their electricity bill. That's very important.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, then we've already nailed this out then. So let's say this is a Penlevy mythical skull.
And Zil in the chat says, from what they can see, it's called an oath skull.
Oath skull. Penlevy oath skull. That sounds even cooler.
Yeah,
Thank you. Penlevy oath skull. Yeah.
Now it is German. So here's the thing we need to clarify. So the oath skull, German oath skull, you're saying is from the 16th century. And it did have letters written on it and so on. And that's not. But what's interesting about it too is that on the oath skull that you're showing in the chat, they use Roman words, right? Like
Latin.
And Latin, yeah. Let's start Roman words. Latin. Thank you. So who knows if? Yeah, I guess if we delve deeper, whether or not it's something that's unique to them, or they were in turn inspired by older like traditions.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I want to find out now, but maybe we
could be rune based as well, couldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it could be it could be rune based, it could be symbol based for sure. So that's definitely an option. And our world is not the real world, so we can easily say, hey, they had this idea, and that's a cool idea, and that's kind of okay too, right? It's up to us to make that decision, and take the liberties where we want to. Yeah. So yeah, Zilpha is with you there, Alex. Change the words to runes.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, really.
Yeah, and what do they do? So that's the thing too. So for the Oskol, let me see. If I look at what they do, I'm curious now. Like, how did the Oskols quote unquote work? Are they just used for chance? Were they basically just crossword puzzles?
From what I read, and again, this could be wrong. Obviously, nowadays you go to court, you place your hand on the Bible, and you swear your oath. The idea was that you swore your oath in court on the skull. Was the idea?
Yeah.
That was like the thing that you would swear by. It's the
So
powerful thing.
What's the significance of the Latin letters? Is that just kind of like swearing on like the Bible, or it's like a literary thing? Like, do you know what the significance of the choice of letters are?
No, I don't. I mean, with it being Latin, I would want to hesitate a guess at being linked with the Catholic Church. I would have thought, but I could be
Sure.
very wrong.
Yeah. This is something that just came up randomly in conversation. We need to read more into it. Like, I'm excited to find out. But
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing a bit of I found an article on Medium called The Ominous Legacy of Oskulls, from Germanic tribes to the Vehemic courts. And they say the Germanic tribes utilize Oskulls, which were often remains of revered ancestors or vanquished foes. And when making pivotal decisions or forming alliances, tribe leaders would swear upon these skulls. This act was more than mere symbolism; it invoked the spirit of the deceased, binding the person to the word to the person with their word with an otherworldly force.
Dude,
so that's part of
maybe. Oh, I've got an idea. Sorry, go. You go. I just got an idea. But you say first.
Yeah. So similar to what you're experiencing against Fairy Queen, there's like a spirit element attached to it. This idea that the spirit of the person who dies like manifests in order to like it's like a NPC in that inhabits the skull because they were a powerful wizard or whatever, they're imprisoned in it, and they're the ones who sort of enforce the oath somehow. That could be an interesting feature of it.
Yeah. So in our world, lore, and game, we have tungets, right? These are
sure, yeah.
oaths that you have to swear to take your legendary profession powers, basically. And if you break them, you lose your powers. And this is a classic trope in Welsh and Irish Celtic legends. And I've just had the feeling, well, what if this skull can create tungets? Like, it can bind you to each other, and it's magical, so that if any of you ever broke your oath, something bad would happen to you because you swore it on this skull. It has that power, and that's something that then it shouldn't be taken lightly, right? If you're both going to agree to something, this becomes a magical bond.
Yeah. Could it summon the spirit inside and you have to battle it or something, or you like?
What if you break the oath?
Yeah, if you break the oath, he basically comes and tries to get you or something.
You know what? Oh yeah, we have those as well. They're called Diathgaur. These are like revenants, the spiritual warriors that chase people that are betrayers or oath breakers. So,
there you go.
Here we are. Yeah, where's the artwork? I have an artwork for it.
I think that comes from that spawns back to Greek mythology. I think that revenants chasing down the betrayers. I think it was.
There it is.
I can't remember what they were now, but they were very prominent in Greek mythology as well. So that must be something that must have been passed down from mythology to mythology.
Okay, cool. Well, we've made something that also fits entirely within the world lore and the mechanics of the game. So I'm very happy with our first magical item.
This is efficient.
Yeah, this is like ideal. It's a way.
It's all downhill from here, guys.
Yeah.
Don't worry, going downhill is where the fun is. That's where you let the brakes go and you just kind of go for it. I've got it.
Chased by a Yaudgar.
You said is a way to sweat tonguids.
Whoops.
Okay, sweat tonguids. Those that I got it. Those that break it are then chased by I can't say that word. Dialgar.
Dialgar. Yeah.
Dialgarur. I am the worst. Please, I write and I read, but I'm terrible with these.
Sorry, I got pronunciation here for you. Dialgarur.
Dialgarur.
What a thoughtful guy.
Yeah. Dialgarur. Ah, there it is. That makes it easier. Dialgarur.
Nice. Yeah, they're drawn by Oathbreakers. Cool. Well, I can't be more pleased, honestly.
That went well. That was surprisingly good.
Yeah. Right. Next magic item. You had some ideas earlier.
I've a few. I had two. I'll throw them both out there, and we'll pick the one that is least bad. The first one came from the mind of my 3-year-old daughter, because I was struggling, and I said, if you could have a magical item, what would you have? And she went, a magic wand. And I thought, well, this is very stereotypical of a 3-year-old girl. And okay, what is the wand? She went, it's a fairy wand. And I went, okay. And she goes, it does air magic. And I was like, okay, this is getting more interested. And I said, but what does it do? And he goes, I don't know, but it does something to the person that has the wand. So it's some sort of fairy air-based buff wand that does something to you. And that was as far as I got from her 3-year-old brain. I pressed it, but she'd already moved on to another topic, so I'd lost them by that point.
So here's the thing. Well, one, what are the... If you can remember, Darren, or we can about it, what are the incidences of magic wands in classic Celt? Are there incidences of that? I'd have to
shoot. I haven't actually come across any, funnily enough, that I know of.
Not to say that we can't do it if it doesn't exist, but it'd be interesting to see if there is a thing. So now I'm looking through some of my...
Go ahead.
Celtic mythology.
I feel like there might be some tales that involve sticks, like magical, like sticks, so somehow got magic to them, and I guess that's kind of wand-esque, but I can't really recall them. And I don't.
Yeah,
we'll do some. If there was a wand, I'd write it down. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm looking through Celtic mythology. It's like Encyclopedia of Celtic Folklore. Let me see if I can find it in here.
Yeah. But do bear in mind though that I do specialize in Welsh Celtic, so there might be stuff in Irish and Scottish that exists that I haven't come across.
There's definitely stuff in Irish.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of them were used for curses. The children were cursed with a wand and turned into the shape of swans. So it seems like polymorphing seems to be quite common with wands. It seems to be about shapeshifting, which maybe it's a shapeshifting wand. You can use it to change your form. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's another one. This is from Cochrane, the Irish heroine, and she was the daughter of King Tara. She betrayed Diomar's father with a shepherd who had magical powers, and when she gave birth to a boy, the father killed it, and the shepherd waved a hazel magic wand over the child's body, restoring him to life. So, that's a classic one of a healing magic wand or something that restores life from death. That's a bit more standard, but, it's like Seinfeld effect because, they did it first. But seems to be a lot of them. There's a lot of hazel wands. So another one is Don Un Dun Bin. I'm sure I'm fucking saying that terribly. Waved the hazel wand over a mangled body, and that's the same one. So yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting one. There's a wand here that was linked with calling forth ancient memories and speaking with past people. That could be that could open up.
So that's like literal necromancy, as in gaining knowledge from the dead.
Yeah, and pulling back memories or some sort of memory-based wand seems a bit of a thing.
I got it. What's your daughter's name?
Emily.
All right, I got Emily's wand right here. So hold on. It's on page 218 of the Encyclopedia of Celtic Folklore. Hold on, I'm finding it right now. What are you? It is so something about another wave of the wand created such a wind that the fly was blown clear out of Midir's place. So they used a magic air wand in order to blow a fly out of the area. I don't know what that means, but
wait, tell us where is this from?
So this is from another Irish wind. This is from Fumnach. The druid was the jealous wife of the fairy king Midir. And let's see here. So some versions say that Fumnach waved a branch of rowan, a magical tree, thereby turning Etain into a puddle of water, a worm, and a fly. And then another wave of the wand created such a wind that the fly was blown clear out of Midir, the fairy king's palace. But Fumnach did not prevail. So it was a wand that transformed people into water, a worm, or a fly, and it also created wind to sort of blow whatever. So it made you small, and then it used the wind because it was much more effective against you to get you the fuck out of here.
Okay, give me some details. Let me write it down. So what's this from?
This is from the legend of Fuamnach. Fuamnach, an Irish legend. And Fuamnach, she had a branch of rowan wood, the magical tree, and turned Etain, place her with a beautiful Etain. So yeah, basically the fairy king was trying to replace her with another beautiful princess named Etain, and so to defend herself, she the side. She took the side girl and fucking turned her into a tiny fly and blew her away with air. So there's a precedence for it, right? There's a precedence for an air wand. Is all we got to say.
Yeah. That is cool about changing the environment. That's not something I don't think I've seen a lot of. So a wand that changes the area you're in to suit you. That could be quite cool. Like change the weather to suit you. Do you know what I mean? Like you're in a foggy swamp. Great, gust of wind, clear.
Also, I just want to say something. Avallen, I just realized her air wand that makes you move. That's basically a magic broomstick, right? But you hold it instead, and you fly through the air with it. It's like this kind of reminds me of now of oh god damn it,
Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins. Yeah.
Yes. She'd be very happy with this conversation right now. She'd be very happy.
Yeah, never joined the chat. I mean, just warn her that there's gonna be cursing sometimes. But okay, so here's the thing: the issues when you're making a magical item, in my opinion, and this is a game design thing, right? Is when you design the item, it has to be kind of interesting, right? Because when someone finds something, they want to make sure that it's good. However, when you're already in a setting with magic, you also have to make sure that it's either replicating something in your system, but being aware if it's like too powerful or not powerful enough, right? I feel like there's a range of things you can do with a magic wand. And what I mean by that is, if you're just a magician and you're good with elemental magic, if you're a mystic and you're good with elemental magic, could you just tack on like the mystic elemental ability to it and it'll still work? Or like game design wise, how would you like try to work with that? Like how would it work differently from like a normal spell that you would already have access to, or normal magic you would already have access to?
So you're basically asking like, do you tie it into abilities that are already in the game, or make custom ones?
Yeah, that are unique. Yeah, and balancing it correctly is the challenge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, when you're in Avallen, there's times, isn't there, where you're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're traveling, doesn't the weather affect what you're up to?
Yes.
Journeying,
so maybe the wand interacts with that in a certain way that you can, when you're traveling around, the wand enables you to manipulate the weather so that you gain more benefits. Maybe you find more supply. The weather doesn't disadvantage your movement as much, therefore you get there quicker. And maybe that's a way it works, so that rather than it being in your standard gameplay moment, it's just allows you to manipulate the weather, and therefore it stops being too powerful, because all it's doing basically is making your travel time more efficient, I suppose, is one way of looking at it.
That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Darren.
No, I was going to say, I think the answer to your question is both and always and everything. Right? Like, sometimes you just want to have a minor item that can be found in places that does a little thing, and that just helps you with something that's already in the rules, right? Other times, and I guess it's the narrative weight that matters. Is it something that you just found, or is it something that's the culmination of a whole quest or an adventure?
Sure.
And then it might, then again, I would say then it might have something more bespoke and more epic. But then there's also a charm in finding something random. Like, again, it's the Lord of the Rings, right? You find a ring, it looks special. What does it do? Oh, I put it on, I become invisible. But it does more than that, right?
Right.
So there's also a charm in finding something that you don't realize how powerful it is, and it has more to it. So I don't know how to answer your question.
That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a philosophical thing, right? Like, it's I just always feel like, okay, for example, in let's take the standard Dungeons and Dragons. When you have a magical item or a potion or something, obviously a wizard can cast spells and cast magic on his own, but the resource limit is memorization, because it's like a, what do you call it? The what's the magic system when you call it? Roy.
Dude, you ask me questions and I forget the answer just because you've asked it to me.
It's from like the Wizard anime, whatever it's called. The author of that. Anyway, the type of magic system that Dungeons and Dragons is, where you memorize stuff, and like I said,
Vancian.
Thank you. It's a Vancian magic system, and that's like a limit for classic D&D second edition and some wizards in fifth edition, I guess. 'Cause sorcerers can cast it when they want, I guess, right? If I'm not mistaken. So if you have like a wand, often wands have charges, and that's the limit, right? It's like a thing that you could use. So in Avallen, when someone finds a thing, but they can use magic already, why would it be interesting to have a magic wand that has air magic if you already can do elemental
Oh, I
air?
see what you're saying. You're saying, okay, let's give people a wand. We have air magic in the game. Air magic can make you fly, sort of, as well sometimes. Why would they use this wand over the air magic? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Then it's a game design question, right? Of like, why is this interesting and why should you use it? Because you never want to come across a magic item like, this sucks. Why would I ever use this?
Yeah. See, so I haven't actually done that much yet. I haven't included many magic items that just cast spells. I wanted to make them, well, different for that. But you're right, and this is prompting me. And the reason why would be because in Legends of Avallen, casting magic is dangerous. And when you cast a spell, you have to build up advantages to help you cast that spell based on your equipment and your allies helping you and the circumstance to make it less likely that you could fail. Having an item that can cast a spell for you, I would probably do two things. One, I would have it cast a particular spell in a particular way, but give it a set number of advantages to casting it already. So it's not tied to your equipment. It's something innate to the item, which means anyone can use it. Even a warrior in like plate armor has no experience with magic, well, they can use this wand because it has built-in advantages to casting that particular spell. And then the other part of it as well is that because it's an item that's casting the spell, if you were to fail with your check, well, you could break the item to have the spell work, and that's not so bad because it's not part of your gear. It's just something that's in your pocket, basically. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So you can exert like an exertion type mechanic to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I mean, as long as we're clear about that in terms of what makes sense and how it's different, the way we're using magical items in our game as opposed to a different game. That
actually, wait, pause. So Zilphia just said in the chat exactly what I said. Non-magic users can use it, and now I'm now working through that in my head and saying, is that how we want it to be though? Like from a world design, because we can do this from a game design perspective and also a world design perspective. If we make it so there are magic wands that can cast spells, from a flavor standpoint, you associate that with mages, wizards, witches. You don't really see warriors walking around with a wand, right?
Yeah.
We can reinforce that by changing the rules so that no, actually, non-magic users can't use it. And the reason why a magic user might do it is because it's better at casting that spell, for example, than doing it by themselves.
Or non-magic users have to give up more, like they don't get an advantage, or they have to give up an edge or something in order to activate it. Like you could also put a cost on using it, right?
Alex, you play lots of games. How do you feel about that?
I might be a bit polarizing, but I don't like the idea of some sort of barbarian type picking up a wand that's been given to him for whatever reason and him just being able to cast a spell, because even if let's say some godly entity has created this wand and empowered it with their knowledge of the spell, that's still going to require a semblance of control to use. I mean, like, magical wands aren't just point and clicks, are they? Normally, there's still requires
like
some
gun.
Exactly.
You can get a gun.
Exactly. You've just if you have wands that just cast spells, you've just put guns in the game. That's what you've done. And I feel like a wand should require a certain element of skill, but therefore should bring something in that is different to normal. Either it amplifies that particular spell, like, let's say you've got a fairy queen that's the queen of air. Maybe when you cast a particular spell with that wand, it adds an extra effect to your air spells. It makes more sense to me than just a barbarian going fireball, fireball, fireball whenever he feels like it, because you end up sort of, I don't know, flavor-wise, and it doesn't fit for me.
And I think this concept of like everyone kind of using everything is a more recent fantasy convention in a way. Like in Tolkien, for example, magic items are insane and rare, and it's much more low fantasy, right? Like there's also the milieu that you want to sort of cultivate in our game, in our atmosphere. Like, are we low fantasy, mid fantasy, high fantasy? I see Avallen as like low to mid fantasy, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so in that case, you definitely want to discourage non-magic users using it, but maybe it's not impossible if you just create that.
So question, and this is for Alex again.
Oh god.
So you don't like the idea of a barbarian picking up a wand and being able to shoot fireballs?
No.
But how do you feel about a fire-breathing sword that can shoot fireballs?
See, to me that feels
different, right?
Different, because,
exactly. It's different.
because they've learned to wield the sword, and it's the sword that's doing the. I mean, what we were talking about earlier, the idea of proficiency, the idea of if you're very good with a sword, and then there's added benefit to that sword.
Change it. What if it's a ring?
Yeah.
Anyone can wear a ring and become invisible, which is illusion magic essentially, right?
Yes. I mean,
but it's different. I think it's okay that it's different.
Yeah. Do you know what? Talking cool items and rings. I don't know. I'm just a total curveball. Yeah. So I also have got into Warhammer a lot more recently, and one of the characters that I've recently painted is I think his name is Kado, and he's this vampire lord, and he's got these items. Yeah. If you put in Kado, Cado, and he's got these rings that he wears, and most of the vampires are bad. They just want to kill and feed and stuff. And if anybody in the chat knows this lore, by all means correct me. Yes! But his lore is slightly different because he wants to find redemption. But he's got rings, and the idea is that each of his rings is imbued with the souls of one of his advisors. So he can seek their counsel at any moment using and interacting with his ring. But on the flip side, because he's undead, if a necromancer, the great necromancer wants to control him, he still can. But I did like the idea of a soul having like a ring, having a soul in it that you can commune with, and they offer you counsel. I thought that was such a beautiful touch. The idea of this like soulless entity is being guided by his previous counselors, and he's in his quest for thing. So that was a massive side detour there. You mentioned magical rings, and it just reminded me. But it was such a cool piece of flavour.
It is cool, but like, wouldn't you be pissed off to be trapped in a ring? Like, are they trapped inside the ring?
I mean, if you knew you were going to die, and someone said, "Well, I can keep you around in a ring, and I'll chat to you occasionally," you might be like, "Yeah, all right."
Yeah, well, because that's what I mean. Like, so it depends on the cosmology, right?
Yeah.
Like in Avallen, like that if you live an honorable death, you can join your everyone and your god in like a paradise. Would it be would it be torture to be trapped in a ring if you knew that's what you're being deprived of?
Yeah. Unless you were truly devoted to the person who you were giving the ring to, and you would happily sacrifice yourself to better them.
Honor or something as well.
Yeah. Warhammer is different, right? Warhammer is a fucking hellscape. So that is probably so Warhammer is probably better to end up in a ring than like somewhere else in the universe. So I think the perspective matters and context for sure. So okay, so we're on a one. So the idea, and this one is it spirit, no spirit, but if it has to do with air, which I think there's a there's a precedence for it in Celtic mythology. Is still possible. It's a question of what it can do, what are the limits to it, who can use it, and what does an air magic wand look like in Avallen, which is an interesting question to answer. It really is, because it is what gives our setting a different characteristic from say D&D or Harry Potter, or do they have magic wands in Warhammer? Do they have like casters? I haven't.
In Age of Sigmar, because obviously in Age of Sigmar, which is what Kado's from, you don't obviously there's very few ranged weapons. So instead it's a lot about casting magic. But I don't I think a lot of the stuff that I've encountered, I must admit I'm quite new to Age of Sigmar, but a lot of the guys that I've been seeing tend to be based more around like staffs and stuff, or they just cast it themselves because they just are magically imbued themselves and don't need the aid of a wand, so to speak.
And that's an interesting thing too, like the difference between casting magic spells with your hands and then casting spells with like a focus or something. That's like another interesting thing. When I was a kid playing like 2nd edition, that was always interesting to me too, like because you grew up knowing that wizards have magic wands, but then you also see that there's different components, and the way they had that is in Dungeons and Dragons, just magic wands have their own magical properties. Do you still see it? So when you play Avallen, do you imagine that the wand will have? Do you prefer it when the wand has its own magical property, or that it's used as like a foci for channeling your magic ability?
I mean, I suppose flavor-wise, now that you said about channeling, it might, naturally a lot of the casting is done with the hands. So in Avallen and stuff, like the idea is that if people can see it, they might have an issue with you casting magic. So you cast it with your hands. So the idea is that obviously the wand is in your hand. So I feel like the wand should add some sort of effect to it, because you've used the wand in your hand, so I feel like it's channeled the magic through into the wand, and it obviously popped out the other end, and it would have something added to it. But I mean, is it more subtle to cast magic with a wand in a hand?
I don't know what I'm feeling saying now. I just remembered we already have wands in Avallen, and they help you cast spells. But I guess we're talking about a different kind of thing, right? We're talking about a particular kind of spell imbued wands that's related to a certain kind of magic. Yeah. So
actually, we have what do you call it? We have what do you call them? Like what are they called? What's the word in the game? They're not totems. They're
Well, we have charms. We also have staffs and one. We literally have a wand item. It's called a wand.
Yeah. So how would this be? How would this different?
So I think how this is different is that you probably allow a spellcaster to cast a spell that they don't already have in the same way that spell scrolls do. It would probably do it a certain amount of times, like once per sunrise or something like that, and it would make that spell more powerful for that spellcaster. It would be able to do it in a better way and make it easier for them. Basically, it gives them a one shot of doing the spell really, really well once per day, essentially. Or it gives a spell extra benefits they wouldn't be able to do by themselves, like flying, for example, or something like that. Yeah.
Sorry, and also Zilfia is also a fan of Warhammer, and they note that they have Psychers in Warhammer, not any wand usage on the 40k side of things. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Thank you for clarifying that.
So I'm actually now curious about doing some world lore. Like, so for example, this Penlevi skull we've made is really awesome and perfect, but whose skull is it? Where is this person? And also this wand. Where did this wand come from? I didn't say who made it, maybe, but at least who owned it or who's used it in the past. Yeah.
So with the wand, for me, considering it's wood and obviously like it's air and it's fairy, a lot of the fairies are quite organic in their nature. So I feel like actually it would be a piece of them, like a small piece of, like they would actually use part of them to make it. So like the fairy queen has petals, maybe another fairy literally ripped off one of her petals and coiled it into something, and it's hence why you get the benefit, because you've got a little piece of them and they're adding their element to your spell.
Cool, I love it. So you're talking about the Elil from the Penbaith clan,
there you go.
The Fae of the Evermother, Guardians of the Forest, Dryads. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm kind of okay with that. How do you feel about that, Kurt?
No, that's good. The only important thing there to note is how does wind figure into the lore of it, right? Like, so the idea that if it's like I love the idea of the Dryads creating I guess the Lil creating a wand, and maybe the original purpose, if it controls wind, is something to propagate pollen and whatever to grow forests faster or something like that. And so that could be the domain can even be hold on, I gotta look at my rule book here. It could be elemental wind, but hypothetically it could also be light, right? Like helping things grow. I don't know. It could be helping things grow, or it could be using the wind to propagate things or to move small things all around. But I do love the idea of it coming from
maybe because the Elil, what they do is they nurture the gardens in the Evermother's otherworld, essentially, where there's all these fantastical, wonderful things, and they also protect them from otherworldly beings that might want to consume the wonderful plants they're in. So maybe one particularly special Elil is in charge of wind and like you said, pollination, like that's part of their role. They're an important Fae, they're a legend of some sorts, and one human did something that impressed them for whatever reason, and they gave a part of themselves to that person to give them their power.
Yeah, there's something suggestive about that, of ripping a part of your body off and then pollinating things.
Bro, come on.
We won't get into that. No, okay, so for example, solar magic, like it could be in sort of the solar school of magic, right? Because solar magic has to do with the sun, but also things growing.
Yeah.
Or elemental wind. I guess it could be both or either.
So I'm settling on that. This is some kind of Fae who's in charge of guiding the winds in the other world. But the question is then, why did they give a piece of themselves to a person?
I would say because that person was willing to risk their life to defend something they were protecting. I would imagine like they're protecting the forest, and this person was willing to put their life on the line for it, and as a sense of, you know, a kinship, I suppose. The idea of, oh, I'm doing it and you're doing it too. Okay, well, let me help you do it better. Here's a piece of me to use for other forests or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the wind as well is. Oh, sorry, go on, Kurt.
Oh no. Well, what I'm saying is, so this is a cool backstory, but then that implies that this is something that's unique rather than something that they kind of do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. We don't want
Millions of them.
Yeah. Because you're right. So there's a question: is this, when we're talking about these particular spell ones, is this where they come from? Is it always a piece of wood from a little? I don't think so. I think that's just going to be this wand. I think. Yeah.
Okay. So they find it, and then that becomes one of their. Zilphia also had an idea about the skull. The skull could have been from a crazed ruler from the Penlevy clans that hated Oathbreakers, and a powerful mage or something created the skull from their skull after their death. Oh, that's fun. Like a guy who just fucking hates liars and loves honor so much that they wanted to make sure that people tell the truth all the time from their death until the end of time. That's a fun idea.
Yeah, maybe he was betrayed by something at some point.
Yeah.
Or maybe as a kid, or something about his parents or his dad, and he like swore to never be.
His dad said he would come to the Penlevy baseball game, and he didn't. He held that against him. And you're like, no, you'll never lie me again. And
it was going to be a home run, and some idiot turned up with this air wand, and they blew it back in, and it fell on the floor, and we lost.
Yeah, it all ties in. It's all protecting the integrity of Penlevy baseball. Is basically where the origin of this this game is cheating. Yeah. So I do like that idea. We could riff on that.
All right, let me write down Silky's name as well, so we have.
Yeah, we want to make sure that if this makes it, we'll give you a shout out.
So this is okay. So this is a Penlevy, a Penlevy leader through childhood trauma, hates liars and lying. Had a zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance lying policy. Policy in his tribe, which led to a lot of deaths, probably a lot of diplomacy issues with others. That's fine.
Yeah.
Upon his own death, his leading priest took his skull and made this oath, sealing, truth-telling artifact from it in his honor, basically. Yeah.
That's a fun idea. Thank you so much for the idea, and we'll mull it around. I do dig. Yeah, it's a fun idea. And I also like this idea about the Allil who gives a part of herself. It has to be a significant cost too, right? Like, because the thing is, Allil, they're technically immortal.
And they're kind of woody, so they probably grow back. So I don't know if does it have to come up with the cost, Kurt? You're always about the cost. Why?
Because that gives magic its power, right? Like things often there should be a trade for things that have meaning.
Okay, so the question: so is it a cost for the Allil that gives it away, or the cost for the person that's receiving it? Because why does it have? Surely, I mean, we're mortals, right? The story's from a mortal perspective. The cost for that mortal was the sacrifices and the efforts that they gave to help the grove, and that's how they got this gift, right? Does the Allil have to have a cost? Why can't they just take a part of themselves to give it to someone? They don't do that all the time.
Because then that's how you avoid there being a billion wands, right? It's economics.
Yeah, I know that's what you're going to say, but why can't the Allil just not do that? Why do we have to come up with a reason for that? Why can't it be that they're not supposed to do it, and this was just special for some reason?
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be okay. There's a purpose, right? That has to sort of, if you're going to create a compelling story for something, there always has to be the cost is basically the narrative device of saying yes and or no but. So it's saying yes, she can do this, but something happens. right? There always has to be this thing attached to it in order to make it compelling. Otherwise, it's just she took off her armor and gave her the thing, and maybe that's okay. Like you're saying, like yeah, maybe I guess you don't have to think about it too hard if you don't want to, but the story becomes more compelling if you do, and that's what it's about, right? Like the reason why we play these games, and are interested in artifacts is because the cost associated with them. A really good example of that might even be Excalibur, which we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Why is Excalibur such a compelling story? It's because nobody could take it out of the stone until you are the king. And once you take it out, you are basically sworn to be the sort of destined person to wave the sword and be the king of England or whatever. Like that's a quote unquote story cost involved with it, right? It's a unique singular item, and you have to be this person in order to take it out, and that's a compelling story. So if it's like a story of an Elil giving up her body, and it's not something that we find a lot of, if it's something that's easily done for her, then why doesn't she just do it all the time? Then I think it's more compelling to come up with a rationale for why she doesn't just constantly take off her arm and just give it to everybody else. And
So, I mean, my first thinking is, well, obviously it's a great power, and you don't want to give it away willingly. You want to give it to someone you think you can trust and that you think will be a responsible actor. But
Sure.
Zilphia says in the chat, they can only ever create one, and they can only create one after reaching a certain point in their lives. Yeah, but the question is then, why can they only make one? Right? What is it that they're losing? Any ideas, Alex?
Well, maybe not one, but I like the idea of a certain point in their life. Like maybe there's a certain, like maybe it's literally her arm. It regrows really slowly, but you can't do it all the time because of how slow it takes these things to grow. But she's literally like chucking off like her arm, and it takes time for her arm to grow back. So she's willing to do it, but she can't do it often because obviously she'd end up with nothing left.
Yeah. And so the idea there is she's only giving it up because she feels that by giving it as a gift to somebody that it'll do more good than if she has it, right? It's
Exactly.
like admitting she's a servant of the Evermother, and she has this in order to be in service of the Evermother. So the only reason she would do it is if she basically hinders herself with the assurance that she knows the person she's giving it to will do more benefit for the Evermother than if her just keeping it doing her duty.
Yeah,
or something.
100%. And then as it comes to what Zilphia said in the chat, at a certain point in the lives, well, we know that there's some kind of hierarchy in Fae, right? There's some Fae that are more powerful than other Fae. So I imagine only certain Fae can do this. At some level. Okay, cool. I'm happy with that. And we've done the lore for the Nevi Skull as well. That's awesome. 2 magical items down.
Boom.
I like it. All right, next runes of the runes of many things. The rune tablets of many things.
Oh, wait. Yeah, we can do that now. Actually, we'll save your one for
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
You can,
Leave that up.
All right, what was your other idea that you had? You had 2 ideas. So we took the first one, so we can't reject the second. But
the second one is I thought of it for amusement's sake. So one of the things I've loved about playing Legend of Avallen is the role-playing side of it. Like forgetting the gaming side of it and the combat and all that stuff, just role-playing the character. I've really enjoyed sort of role-playing in that world. And then I thought, what if there were items that actually affected how you role-played? Like they actually affected how your character acts. So like to start with, I thought of them as a bit of a joke, and I thought like, you know, you could have like a giant, like, I don't know, like Claymore-esque barbarian weapon, and you've got to use an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice the entire time that you're using it, otherwise it just becomes a lump of metal. So you have to walk around. At the moment you break character and you don't do the accent, you lose some benefit. Granted, it's a silly version, but you know, sure. If you tie in the fact that this item came from some sort of vain person, and you know, you have to embody them to gain the benefits of that particular item, was kind of the vein that I was going down. I couldn't really think of anything specific, but I like the idea of it affecting how you role play, because you have to behave in a certain way to make the weapon work for you, which ties in a lot with what you were saying earlier about the Celtic mythology and the idea of being honourable, you know, following a certain character trait to allow the weapon to almost open itself up to you. But yeah, I just...
So yeah, I kind of ran with Alex's idea, and I really like this idea of, like, say maybe it's not a sword, but let's say for now it's a big sword, and it belonged to a fantastic hero, and that hero just sees himself larger than life, or at least his spirit or energy does, associated with the sword. And then you have to act in that way. You have to also be like a larger than life hero legend for the sword to work for you. What do you think about this idea of weapons changing the way that you play your character?
And you have to do it with an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before I have some thoughts on that, but also definitely has a comment about the last thing, maybe a societal rule preventer to do more than one by the Evermother. That's definitely something we can explore as well, whether or not it's actually educated by the Evermother and the people that, the fairies that work for her. So that's a great idea. Now, with regards to this idea of items that affect your roleplay, obviously that's a classic thing, right? Like perfect example is the gender swapping thing that we mentioned earlier, where all of a sudden you have to play the opposite gender. Oh no, it's the 70s. This isn't okay. But also this concept of every group is different, right? And so the dynamic that you have with your group and how you role play will vary. And how much of the things that you offer, where do you offer the opportunities for role playing in your items? It's an interesting idea to do it within the item set as a magical item. But is that something that you want to be part of your game, that you consistently, that you do it as a one-off? It's an interesting concept, but doing it in such a way where it's compelling, but the person or the GM who uses it, regardless of the style of play, they're able to look at it and be like, oh yeah, I can use this. I think that's the hard part, right? Because then you're doing something different rather than giving them tools to say this is an archetypical item like a magic wand that's air, and you're familiar with that and you figure out how to interact with it. What you're trying to say with that item is you must play in this way. And for some GMs and some groups, they might love that, and other groups, they might hate it. Yeah. I could see a group hating it. And if you add that into your game, is that something that's okay? Is it something that is for some people and not others, and you clarify that? Or is it something better to avoid altogether because you're not sure if that's something you want to introduce and have people feel like,
so what you're saying is, like, imagine we do what we said, where we have a sword that you have to act in a certain way, be a larger than life hero to be able to use it, and it's a really good sword, but your character's not normally like that. Would you get annoyed having to play differently to use the sword? What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, because some players, they might just play, because then what you're saying is there's a valid way of playing a role-playing game, right? And for some groups, it's saying, okay, I act like a great hero, rather than acting like a great hero, right? Like there's a sort of descriptive version of doing it, and then there's the immersive version of doing it. And both ways of playing role-playing games, I think, are valid. Like, would you agree, disagree?
I mean, the only reason I brought this in, the idea, was the idea of, because I suppose to some extent, when you're role-playing, it now creates conflict, and you've got to judge that idea of, would my character be willing to behave in this way for this item or not? Like, you might decide, I'm willing to make this sacrifice, I'm willing to, whatever my backstory, I'm willing to do this in this moment. Or maybe you decide the majority of the time you're not willing to do it, but in this dire situation, fine, I will betray myself to do this. Or maybe it's like a particular action that you've got to do, like, I don't know, like, you've got to show some semblance of benevolence to activate it. But I suppose at that point you start teetering with the burden system and the resolve and stuff like that. But yeah, you could action-based. But yeah, I like the idea that it almost creates a conflict for the character. I think that's what I liked about it, was the idea of, well, okay, so are you willing to act this way for this? Because that's what happens in life. You're in situations where you feel like you have to behave in a certain way to achieve something, when actually that might be a little bit false for you. You might be in like a board meeting, and you've got to behave in a way that's not your natural state for your everyday life, but you do it for the sake of that moment to achieve that thing.
Right. So and that's a great role-playing story narrative trope, right? And we kind of have it built in our game, I think, with motivations and virtues and flaws, right? Yeah. Is that something we can, for example, is it okay, let's say it's like a spirit, right? That wants you to act to become a great hero. Instead of acting like a great hero, what if it's something like you have to sort of act against your flaw or something like that?
Yeah, or something that changes your motivation or allows you to change your motivation.
Yeah. Exactly. But it can align with your current motivation, because the point of it is to help you grow. So if your character is supposed to be, let's say their thing is that they're impulsive, So if they're impulsive and their virtue is, but he wants you to not be impulsive, he like he'll make you act differently from that, right?
Yeah.
Like make you act shameless, or if you're
Or it could be the opposite. It could be instead of impulsive, you have to be I forget what we called
Thoughtful?
it, reticent, whatever it is, the cowardice one, the cautious one, or whatever.
well, there's like timid.
Yeah. Oh, I guess maybe go as far into the virtues probably better. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I like both ideas. Let's say there's an item that makes you want to do the virtue associated with your flaw, and then the flip side of that is an item that makes you want to do one of the flaws associated with your virtue.
Yeah.
So if you're usually honorable, whatever it is, then it asks you to be vain instead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, somehow, and that way you're doing what you're saying, which is it's creating this tension, but it's built into as you're making use of the rule set available to you. So that way that accommodates both role playing styles, right? It accommodates both the person who wants to act like the thing, but also the person who doesn't normally like want to embody the character, but descriptive, but they're still describing it within the context of how they've developed the character, which I think is good, and so you're giving it clear demarcations of what it means to use this item, and it's similar to alignment in D&D, right? Like those are popular magical items, like the goblet of, I forgot what they're called, the something of evil or of chaotic evil that changes your alignment, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a classic thing they did in old first and second edition D&D. I'm sure I don't know if they do it now, but because I don't recall. But yeah, so in that way, if you use the motivation, virtue, the personal aspect system, that could be really interesting of doing what you guys are talking about, I think, and getting people to play against their type in a different way.
Cool. So we've got two items now. We've got one item turned into two items. We've got one that is something that emboldens you to act in your virtue for one of your flaws. And the other one is an item that tempts you into the flaws of your virtue instead.
The flaw, either the flaw of excess or the flaw of...
Yeah, we either choose whichever one,
Yeah.
So then what are these things, and where do they come from? Why and what would be so strong that would make you want to do that? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could just riff right now and do some research later. But Alex, I'll leave it to you. Like, so your idea with a sword, and for one thing, impossible, right? Like that could be interesting. Like for the virtue one, some kind of weapon, obviously.
Yeah, just super heroic, right? Yeah.
Well, do you know what's funny actually is I actually feel like it'd be interesting actually if you had a big sword that was like the sword of the meek.
Yeah.
And to activate the sword, you had to behave in a really cautious manner, because naturally, who's going to get a big sword? It's going to be someone like barbarian, gung-ho-esque. Yeah. So you're doing the opposite, and you're saying, no, if you want to use this sword, you've actually got to behave the opposite way, and then we've got the tension.
You've got to be measured.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be a bit more slow to process and think, rather than just going straight.
Well, the other side of that, though, is what if the sword only works for people that are already meek, and forces them to be emboldened and heroic?
Very true. Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
So does that mean then, because we have like timid, are there just like, is there a cycle of magical items that are meant?
Yeah, why not? I mean, that sounds interesting to me.
No, because imagine this. Imagine there's like a week. So the history is like, it's like a farm boy, or there's a legendary nobody, right?
Yeah.
That was thrusted upon him a great mission of some sort, or the hero's journey, but he doesn't want to fucking do any of it.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, all right, well, this is our guy, or whatever, and each of them created an item aligned to one of the virtues that he had to sort of master in order to. So there's like a sword of the, there's a sword of the, there's a gauntlet of the callous, there's a helm of the foolish or something. Ooh, so he was a fucking but it does the opposite for you and turns you, and when you assemble it, it's like Voltron. You become like this.
That needs to be an assembled version. It does.
Like each of them can be used by on their own, and they're like they boost you up. But when they're all together, it's basically our version of equipment Voltron.
Yeah. Boosts virtue.
Yeah.
But are we saying it can only be used by someone that has the flaw of that virtue?
I feel like you need. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
could just.
Like you have a weapon that only timid people can use.
Yeah. So the person who used it was a nobody.
Yeah.
He had all of these flaws or something, or lacked all of these things.
Oh, wow.
But by using them, he these
Dude,
gifts.
this is super cool. I hadn't even thought about this before. Like magic items associated with your flaws or your virtues in the personality system. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is like this is more bottom up game design, right?
Yeah.
Rather than taking it from the story, we're using the mechanics we have available to us and just
Yeah.
trying to associate. Well, I guess it's both. We went both ways, right? You did from
Yeah.
the top down, like that item, and then we connected it with bottom up.
So in that case, then I should probably get up the flaws and virtues, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I have it right here. Page 15. If you're following me in your Bibles, Legend of Avallen, we got page 15 here.
What have we got? We've got.
Alex, you having fun, bud?
I'm loving this. I'm really. Do you know what? I'm really excited for these sort of anti-item things. I don't know what we call them. Like
Virtues. We call them virtuous. The virtuous stuff.
well, yeah, but there's the other ones as well, isn't
Oh
there?
yeah,
That's
the
what I mean.
opposite one. Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be a reason why there's equal opposites as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
All right. Well, okay. If you want to connect the items, you can create a Cain and Abel story of like the one brother or sister who was like this fucking huge like character who needed to be humbled, and his brother who was nothing and needed to be sort of raised up.
Yeah.
So you can always go by that. Like you could use that mythological type thing, or they could be different people, or it doesn't have to be that at all, right? It doesn't have to be that legend per se. It could be another thing entirely. It could be like a curse of 5 different heroes or 5 different like kings that were too big for the britches, and they created cursed items, or fairies created cursed items to fuck with them, which is actually a good trope too. Fairies fucking with mortals. It's like one of their favorite pastimes.
Yeah, so maybe the items that encourage virtues were created by the other ones, and the items that encourage flaws are created by the Fae.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. That works.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah. Very good. Wow.
When you're living forever, you got to entertain yourself somehow.
Yeah. Mortals, yeah. So what we're imagining here is then we're saying that there will be a sword of the valiant. Its magical powers can only be used by someone who's timid or reckless, but it can only be used by them if they enact something that is valiant.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other side is there's an item that can only be used by someone who's dignified, but it only activates when they do something shameless or vain. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, they are shameless.
No. There's 2 types of items we're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, but those other items, are those cursed items, or are they? Because like, if they're cursed, it can also be like they're stuck with it until they do the shameless thing, and then they're able to like get rid of it.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. So I was wondering, like, how strong does an item have to be, or interesting that someone would want to embrace flaws that they don't have and like get rid of something. But if you're saying it's a cursed item that's bound to them until they do it, then that's
Because that's a funny
interesting.
thing too, right?
I like that.
Imagine you drink from a goblet, you're dignified, and if someone dignified who thinks so highly of them drinks from it, it gets welded to their hand, and they can't get rid of it until they do some sort of shameless act to get rid of it. But but that could be a mini adventure, side quest, or whole thing on its own, right? To get rid of it. Like, this isn't good enough. You have to go in front of the fucking, queen of the Pen Bathe and fucking take off your pants and like say, I'm a magical man, something like that, like something embarrassing.
Okay, so actually that's 2 kind of things, right? That my first instinct was an item that's so good that it tempts you into doing things that you wouldn't want to do normally. You're saying an item that curses you, that forces you to do something you want to do early to get rid of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a possible path we can take.
Yeah.
Yeah, either sounds kind of interesting. I guess it depends on what kind of stories you want to tell with them, right? Like, ultimately, that's what it's about. Like, do you see yourself? If I were to, for example, I have if I'm a benevolent, let's see here, if there's a item that's like greed, that's like greedy, and I'm specifically not a greedy person, like I'm benevolent. Is it feel bad to do that, to like act against your thing, or is it more fun to do that? I don't know. Like,
well, I think both. I think and either it depends on the player, and I think either way could be interesting and fun, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, I leave it to either way. I'm cool with. I like both of these ideas. It's and it's interesting because it's kind of what, again, like alignment was a thing, right? But in older games that I'm familiar with, especially D&D, but here it feels more role playing centric, right? Like it feels more like it's giving you meat to sort of fuck around with your personalities, and that's a lot of fun.
Right, then I want to try and make one of these then, and the item that tempts you is what I think will probably be the most difficult, so I want to try that.
Okay, the item that the item that tempts you, i.e., you mean the one that you have to get rid of,
no,
or the one that you
go on.
That empowers you if you do the deficiency.
Yeah. So say you're a dignified person, and this item rewards you for being shameless.
That's hard.
What would that be, and why would it be tempting for someone who's dignified to use? It goes against everything that you're about, right? Is that even possible?
Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine a beautiful mask.
Yeah.
That when you wear it, clearly it's powerful because it lets you answer or lets you know one unknowable thing or something that you don't know. Like it gives you like temporary clairvoyance or insight into something, but it's a mask. But in order to use it, you have to debase yourself in some awful way in order to gain that clarity of insight.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. So that might mean stripping down naked and jumping to the river in front of the queen. It might mean cheating on somebody you love and breaking their heart. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a sacrifice. So
and the thing is you know there's going to be someone in the party that is shameless and be like, I would do that in a heartbeat, but it only works for the person that's dignified, exactly. Right?
Oh yeah. But what if it's a mask, and so no one knows you do it, but you have to live with that truth in order to gain that benefit, like cheating on your partner or fucking killing a baby. I don't know. That's probably too much.
We went dark fast there, didn't we?
That's probably too. But you know what I mean? Like that could be a thing. Like it's like dignified, but you have to do something that debases you that you have to live with.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
See, I think with that, it's got to be something that has lasting effect. Like it needs to be something that you can't. Because the thing is, if you strip off and jump in the river naked, right? I mean, speaking as a character who has walked down the streets in Avallen naked to distract so my party can escape. You know what I mean? Like after that event, it doesn't mean anything. So I think it needs to be something that like is so big that word would travel, and it would, like every time you come to an adventure or you meet somebody new, they've heard of this shameless act that you've done. It needs to be something that I think is
large. I think there's two ways of doing it, right? It could be something that's powerful. You have to do something one time to gain its strength, and then you can use it then going forward.
Yeah.
Or it's something that every time you want to use it, you have to do something.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's room for both of them. One where every time you do something that's with the people around you, and the other time where it's like an item that's so strong that you have to do something that, like you said, word will spread around it. But then you have that. You've done that one thing, it shamed you, but now you can use this item. Unless someone else takes it, and then you have to do it again if you want to get it back. Right?
God damn it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So when we talk about being dignified, right?
Yeah.
So let's take, because this has to do with the virtue of being dignified and the impulse of satisfying yourself, which is a kind of a vanity. And the flaw can either be a deficiency, like you could debase yourself, or you could have too much of it, like you're vain. Is there a way to for example, I can imagine something like if I'm a dignified person, that's my virtue. I do not want to debase myself. But I can also have the flaw of excess, right? If I scar myself or do something like making myself not beautiful, that can also sort of feed into this as something that's undesirable. Does that work, like where, because the virtue is dignified, whatever you do, it can sort of slot into either the flaw of deficiency or the flaw of excess?
I feel like the deficiency, for me, feels like more of a choice against it, because if let's say you're dignified and then you become vain, it's kind of like a passive byproduct of being dignified. You've kind of gone too far with the same act. Whereas to be shameless is to go completely against your natural state of being. So I kind of feel like the deficiencies are like conscious acts that go against the virtue, whereas the flaws of excess are more like they can passively happen without you meaning to. If you know what I mean? Like, if you constantly challenge people, it's very easy to become reckless. But to refuse the challenge and avoid the risk is a conscious choice. And I feel like the deficiencies kind of fit more with this idea of creating that role-playing argument within yourself, because you have to actively choose against the idea.
Yeah, you're both right. Like the way that they're kind of made and written is the deficiency is the complete lack of it. So it's so clear when you're not that thing. But the excess is obviously when you take it too far. And it's really difficult to know where that line is. But when you get there, you know, oh yeah, that's too far. So I would say like the excess is the slippery slope, and the deficiency is more like a cliff. So it's kind of yeah. So but I would imagine that this item, whatever it would be, you'd probably pick one of the flaws for you to embrace, right?
Yeah, true.
Like I guess I could imagine one that would want you to be vain. But you're right. How would it'd be hard to say do a vain act? What is a vain act?
Yeah.
It's more like a habit, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's kind of passive in a way.
Yeah.
It kind of it builds by accident, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm vain.
But there might just be this thing, like, because vengeful, you can do a vengeful act.
Yes, that's
right?
very true.
And you can do a callous act.
Yeah, and that's also the danger of a cycle. It doesn't need to be a cycle, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is
these are the dangerous cycles. Even though we have them in sort of a what's it called? Even though we're in a structure of things and we have like 5 of each and 5 virtues or whatever, we don't necessarily have to make an item for each one, right? We could just, it makes sense for this, like the timid item, like maybe it just makes sense for this. Someone who has
incomplete cycles are, as we know, like teases, right? If we made one thing and it did this, or 2, then it begs the question of what would the others be like, and we can do that another time. Right?
Yeah, so that's true. Like we don't necessarily have to do it all now. I mean, it's always the temptation to do that, right? The completion
all night.
Yeah, it's almost like a very Magic the Gathering thing to do, I think. That's cool where it came from.
But I don't think they made the full cycle for quite a few years, did they?
For a bunch of things.
Yeah, exactly. They made quite a lot, but they released like the swords. I want to say War and Peace was the last part of the cycle, and it came out so long after the original.
No, they made some new ones recently.
Yeah, they're making new ones now again. Yeah.
They don't exist to me. I'm all about the originals. Feast and Famine, Body and Mind.
There was a new one. I'm trying to remember what it was.
It was like Sword of Prosperity and something or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like,
And they're like doing mirrors of like instants and sorceries instead of colors and colors. But
sort of Once and Future.
Yeah.
From March of the Machines. Like, what does that mean? Once in Future. That's a blue-black one. Oh yeah, that's the blue-black one. No. Anyway, it's like once in.
Anyway, we got to make something.
Right. Yeah, let's pick one. Let's pick a virtue that'd be good to break.
Yeah, pick a virtue that's good to break. That's a good way to think about it.
I think just would be a good one to break. Because if someone's just, they have to be unjust, so callous and vengeful.
Yeah, so someone is just, so they have to do something unjust. Right? Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. What do we associate with justice? Sword of justice, scales of justice. Like it should be a perversion of it, right?
Yeah, the sort of injustice.
Yeah, sure. Sword of injustice.
Right. Sure. Well, yeah, but then if it's a perversion, then it shouldn't be the thing.
No, I kind of like it being a thing because it draws people. Like if you're a just person, swords as part of your.
Oh, I see.
You see what I mean? But
okay.
Yeah.
I was going to try and pervert them even more and give them an axe.
Give them an axe.
The hammer of injustice.
This is the trap item, right? This is the one you get. Ah, fuck! I need to do something I don't want to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
is it? No.
This is the benefit if you go against it. I think.
Yeah. I went to reward you.
Okay, so this is the sort. So you're just. So if you act callously or unjust.
Yeah, I think we need to pick either callous or vengeful or do both. I'm not sure.
See, I feel in this case, going against what I said earlier, I think vengeful is more of a counter to justness than being callous. Because also callous is you can be callous by accident. Vengeful by accident is a bit more challenging.
Well, it's the flaw of excess is that you're so just that you just need to be kill it. Like you're just totally black and white, right?
Yeah.
You're just and maybe that's okay, but what we're implying is that some kind of vengefulness is by its nature not just somehow, right?
Yeah. And a
Just
sword lends itself to vengeance, right?
Yes. Oh, it does.
Yeah. So it's a sort of there's like an unbalance. Okay, so there's an unbalance to it. This and scales aren't really a thing yet, so we shouldn't say that.
Yeah, they are. Scales are a thing.
Well, in Raxico. Okay, I guess that's another thing too. Is it a Raxian item or is it a Valak item?
Yeah. We'll come to that. So this is an item that can only be used by someone who is just, but it requires they do something vengeful
To unlock some sort of bonus thing.
to unlock its potential.
Yeah. Like, you flooded the land, and there was famine, and 50 people died, so I'm going to kill 50 people of your village now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, absolutely ridiculous. Like,
Does it power you up to kill those other 50 people, or does it power you up? Do you kill those 50 people and then you unlock? Oh, I'm now very powerful.
I would go for the latter. I
think the latter. Yeah.
You've paid the price, and it's now gone. You are worthy to see my full potential. Here you go.
Yeah.
You've basically just picked up a giant flaming sword. I mean, basically, we've gone Old Testament, is what we've done.
Yeah. Also, it has a kind of like a weird lesson teachingness to it. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say exactly, but the idea that you can't be just until you know what vengeance is.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
it's kind of like this.
I feel like that's a tagline for a movie. I feel like we're spinning off now into a new genre.
Sure. John Wick 9.
Yeah.
I'm bold British with a beard. Can I be the villain in this film?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like all I need is a swivel chair and a cat, and I'm ready to go.
So this is the sword of vengefulness, or the sword of justice, or something. Wait, did you write a name for it? No, I'm trying to look.
So it's sort of injustice, but sort of vengeance is probably way better. I think it's more vengeance.
Sword of vengeance and callousness.
Yeah.
Get +2/+2.
Justice, yeah.
You get +2/+2 protection from valiant and
No
wise.
justice.
Yeah, you can't. No justice until. Wait, you can't be just. You can't be just until you know what vengeance is.
Until you taste vengeance.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like the opening line for The Equalizer.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what this is.
Okay,
Or like John Wick or something like that.
Okay, exactly.
So what does this sword do? Why would you want it as a just person? And then what does it make you do to get it? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
when you use it and you're fighting against an enemy, again, this is spitballing. Shut it down. It's fucking stupid. When you engage in combat with a creature or a person, it either glows or gives you an indication that they deserve your justice, so to speak.
It's like the opposite. It determines their honor.
What was that?
It determines their honor.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it determines whether or not you are just in slaying them or fighting them or whatever, right? And then gives you an advantage or something, or an edge. It gives you an edge in those cases.
Out of interest, I'm trying to think now. Like, when it comes to weapons, there's like, in like Japanese culture, there's reverse blades, isn't there? Like blades that are forged backwards, katanas that are forged with a blunt edge on the front.
Yeah, so that can be a practice thing, and there's also a conceit of Rurouni Kenshin, the reverse blade batosai.
Yeah, but what if this sword, like, if you go to strike somebody who is just, it like blunts itself to some extent, so and almost to like so that it.
Well, we're assuming that the person who holds it is just, so they would never try to attack someone who is unjust, right?
Yeah, but people lie. That's the problem.
Well, yeah. So
that's
okay.
what the sword does. It tells you if they're just or not.
I know, but I feel like we've just gone from this is essentially just Sting from Lord of the Rings, where it glows if there's bad people nearby.
Yeah, but that's just goblins. You can have honorable goblins as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this here as an idea for now.
Yeah, and it's a question of mechanics too. If we're talking about honor, we don't always have an honor. Like honor is important, but we don't have like an honor score, right?
No. Yeah.
So it's like as a game master, how do you use it? How do you qualify it in a way that's mechanically meaningful? And that's always kind of the challenge with this stuff too, right? Narratively, you can always justify it, like, oh yeah, he deserved to be killed. Look, it's glowing. The 5-year-old is clearly the 5-year-old deserves your blade because he's gonna grow up to be a terrible tyrant or something.
All right,
I don't know.
Then let's brainstorm a completely different idea then, so that we have more than one. That's one idea.
You mean, but for the same sword, for the same
the
item.
same sword, yeah. So
Okay,
the first idea was that it helps you determine who's just to fight against or not. Let's think of something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was thinking it's like on fire. That was the idea of like vengefulness.
Yeah.
Like if something's vengeful, it's always associated with like a flaming weapon, so like just a straight up
So just a weapon that gives you more power.
Yeah, just straight up more damage.
But you have to prove yourself to it to be able to use it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Just straight up damage. It's vanilla, but the idea of being vengeful.
Yeah. But the sort of heart of the item though is that you are just, but you have to do something that's in excess of that. Yeah. Which is more too much justice, right? But that's like a flaw. So that's a feel bad thing. I guess it's fine to get powered up by that though. Yeah, that's fun. Like who doesn't like getting a cool powered up thing? Yeah. But does the danger then become? Because if you good, do you become then, because just is your virtue, so only someone who is just can use it. But once you sort of unlock it with your flaw by peeking into the excess realm, is it then implied that you don't keep being vengeful, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think where my head at now is that someone who's just might want this sword because it would help them enact justice in the world, right? It gives them more power to enact justice. But to do it, they have to do something vengeful first, and then they have to decide if that's what's the greater evil: the fact that they've gone against their core belief, but they're doing it for a greater cause of being able to enact more justice in the world, or is that not something? Is that not just a boundary they will not cross, and they will just not use the sword because it's not worth it to them to ever cross that line? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you could go that the flaming sword only occurs, again, like the last one, when you face somebody unjust. Because, again, it's enabling your justice. So you only gain the flaming benefit when it's against something unjust.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, in the mechanics, then we have to help the game master just...
Yeah,
do we just tell them... I mean, do we just tell them, whenever it's unjust, whatever you decide? Because the game master could also be like, oh, don't worry, like, for example, would it work against a monster that doesn't have a mind and have a concept of justice? Probably not, right?
If it's killed, I suppose the question would be, has it killed something for its own benefit? If the answer is yes, then I would argue that the sword would enable you to enact justice.
To take their lives. Yeah, I guess it's pretty much kind of a hard ass.
Okay. The next thing we need to think about is what is the vengeful thing you have to do? And is it just nebulous of be vengeful, or is it a particular kind of act that it wants you to do? And probably kill something. It's a sword, right? Like, does it... Yeah, how does that work? What? How do you unlock it? What is this vengeful act that it asks a just person to do that goes against their core tenets of belief?
I mean, I guess you could always give a list of like, so we just want like an example of what that might mean, right?
Yeah.
So it could, for example, it could be, if it's a Valak item, a core tenet of it could be you basically kill a Raxian that has spilled Valak blood or something like that.
Mm-hmm. But that could be a just act, though, right? Why is it particularly vengeful?
Well, it's vengeful because it's an excessive justice. It could be the grandson of that person that didn't actually do anything wrong, but you're just kind of doing an eye for an eye. That's why it's just, but it's an excess of that.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah. What if it's that also, but also you have to kill them while they're bound or unarmed or something like that? It can't be in combat. You can't kill them in combat. You have to...
Okay.
But if you're being vengeful, isn't it the idea of going too far? So, like, somebody who killed somebody, you're not just killing them, you're killing them and all their family. You're going too far. You're not just paying eye for an eye. It's an eye for your entire damn body. That's vengefulness. It's that pettiness. It's the idea of going, well, you've done the wrong. I'm going to absolutely wipe out everything you've got.
That immediately made me have a visceral reaction to it. Like, no, I wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
So maybe that's
you are not a vengeful person. I will.
You paid five times. So then you're just trying to find someone that like has no next of kin. That's
to get out of it. No, it wouldn't work then. It must kill a killer and one of their next of kin or something. Because even then, I'm like, you said family, and I just couldn't write that down. It was too much. Yeah.
That's pretty savage.
Cool. No, I'm happy with that. That's
like it has to go too far.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
And the thing is that there will be people in the party that would do that, like you said. But if you're the person that's just, you wouldn't. Yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you gotta live with that.
Yeah.
But then it becomes like the train track problem, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you kill the 5 or do you kill the 1? And then
exactly.
it's like, well.
And then last thing is then the history. What is the history of the soul? Where does it come from?
I think it has to link with one of the
It could do.
gods.
I'm okay with it being Raxian or something as well. Like, I don't know how that would work or what's going on there, but we haven't done that yet.
Well, yeah, if it was Raxian, somehow it could be tied to their sense of justice, right? Like it does feel like it could have like a Raxian like going overboard and like fucking like that's like colonialism. Like, oh, but like those guys killed one of my messengers, I'm gonna fucking it's like a Genghis Khan. Right, you kill my messenger, I'm gonna slaughter your whole fucking it's excessive, right?
And it's kind of a proof of devotion as well. Like, yeah, you're a warrior of justice, but prove your devotion to the Empire by killing these innocents to, gain this weapon or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, doesn't have to be. It could be the Empire, or it could be even older than that if you wanted it to be. Couldn't it? Couldn't it be like an Exilium artifact?
Let's do that. People want that. So, do you know what the Exilium, Alex?
Nope.
No. Cool. The Exilium are the Raxians in our world. They are godless at the moment. They preach a devotion of their emperor or empress at the moment, and also this enlightened state of being called Ataraxia, which is like a letting go of the material world and ascending as a spirit, kind of transcend. It was a real thing, by the way, in Roman culture. But they did have gods once upon a time.
Yeah.
And they followed a similar story to the Valak gods, in that before the gods there were titans.
Right.
The gods gained their powers by defeating the titans that were ruining the land and ruining the people. Mm-hmm. But then the gods kind of went too far themselves and realized their power was gained from devotion. And then they would fight for more devotion and more power, godly wars. And in Avallen, the gods realized this was no good and swore the Ever Pact, receded to the other world, left the mortals to be, and remained as gods there. In Raxian history, they didn't do that. They continued to fight, and it got to the point where the people decided, these gods are doing nothing but bad for us. We have to get rid of them. So then there was another start of like heroes, probably demigods, that rose up to fight the gods, defeated them, but then gave up their power, didn't take their divinity, and now they're godless, and no one rules the other world, essentially.
Right.
So those gods are now exiled, and they're called the Exilium.
So it's like if Hercules went and like fucking took down Olympus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
this is essentially what a lot of them did, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
A lot of them went up against the gods. Perseus, Odysseus, Hercules.
Yeah, exactly. It's all part of that kind of culture and history and mythology, but we just took it a little bit further.
And this item does feel like it could be that kind of like excessive Zeus, like, oh no, fuck that guy, kill everything, you know.
Yeah, you're right. This is like Raxian god. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, this is essentially Ares, isn't it? The god of war. Like it's just outright brutality.
Just vengeance, Ares, god of war. Yeah.
And maybe it's being sort of maybe it's like a really fucked up item, but it was entrusted to someone like a centurion or something, or a general who made their way to Avallen, or it was like a conqueror type situation, but he dies and he gets lost in battle, and then now it's just kind of roaming the Isle after like he died in battle or something. So now it's just kind of out there.
Yeah. And it is brought to Avallen by some warrior or something, right? Like it's something that's been passed around, handed about, and then some people don't unlock its power, so it just seems like a normal sword.
Or you go, if it was given to some legendary centurion, it might be that it becomes this, like, you know, his armor and his weapon would be this enshrined sort of almost like totem thing that gets carried around, and no one's ever wielded it because it's like this honourable thing you don't touch, and then until somebody actually gets hold of it and then realizes that actually it's a little bit more than it looks.
Yeah. I mean, how would you know? So that's the other thing too. How would you know? Does it fucking talk to you? Do you just feel it?
You're right. How would you know? Yeah.
It's the sword from Power Rangers, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Is it? Does it have like inscriptions, like a poem on it or something? That says, like,
maybe.
Yeah,
you shall wield power great. First, you must go out and I don't want to say that word. That isn't great. If you want to unlock my flames, first kill a bunch of people that are not to blame. I don't know.
I do like the idea of it having a riddle, because if it's really powerful and you've got to do something, because also you've got the added benefit that if it's a riddle, somebody might start doing unjust things that aren't quite enough.
Right.
And they actually do all these nasty things that don't quite hit the mark. And they're like, God damn it, what's going wrong with this sword? Like, why won't it just turn
that's
on?
really fun.
And then you've got this conflict of how many times do I do unjust things before I stop messing with this sword because it's costing me my justice?
Yeah. Or someone doesn't realize that it's only for people that are just.
Yes,
and
true.
it just encourages people to do horrible things,
Yeah.
and they never unlock it. I like that idea. And also that it's an inscription means it becomes obviously Raxian, because it will have Raxian writing on it.
It was meant to be this, wasn't it?
Script, yeah.
And that's the thing too. Like I do think, making that balance between it being kind of like mystical and like and inviting conversation, like oh, what is this, and trying to explore it, and it becoming this kind of focus for adventure. But we also have to make sure we're not too cute about it, right? Like someone can't just like hold the sword and the DM's like, oh, I can't wait till someone who's just holds the sword.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're really gonna get it. Like there has to be enough. Otherwise, it can't be useful as like a game thing, right? Like it has to. We have to have something on it that indicates clearly somebody who is just can use this thing. It needs to be a little bit obvious. I think.
Also, it can be a bit awkward if there's no one just in the party, right? But we're putting it in a book that's not a campaign book, right? It's a source book, and GMs can pick up and use whatever they want to use. So if that's the case, that's not one.
I'll tell you what might be cool with it is, because obviously the items get given names when you pick them up, so you know it is. So if you call it the Sword of the Just, maybe what happens is the riddle only appears when someone just holds it. So if somebody else holds it, it doesn't say anything. When the just person holds it, then the riddle appears on the actual shaft of the blade, so they know. Oh, hang on a minute, what's this?
Yeah.
Otherwise they'll pick it up and just go straight down to, right, who do I have to start killing?
Or maybe there's like the start of the riddle there that mentions just. So instead of it being like the GM tells you then the sword has something on it about justice.
Yes.
And then the rest of it appears.
Yes, I like it.
Wow.
So in a way too, that's like a secret power of it, right? Where you can have someone hold your sword and know if they're just or not.
Oh shoot, yeah, that's a consequence of that. Yeah. Yeah, someone.
Which is cool. I mean, I think that is kind of nice, and that is kind of cool. And it becomes like this weird side parlay benefit. Like you're like, fuck you if you're really just hold the sword. But
True.
But does this also mean something different for? Because if it's a Raxian sword, does that mean something different from per person? Is it according to the Raxian version of what justice is, or is it according to what the
if
person?
You were really just, it wouldn't matter, would it?
It wouldn't matter, okay. And also, we have a defined definition of justice in the world law of Avallen, and it is, quote, I right wrongs. I mean, that's it, Kurt. That's...
No. Yeah, but is that the valid version of it?
Yeah. But what is it wrong? Yeah. But we're going to find this out next time on the Avallen podcast, because it's been 2 hours now, and it's time.
I know that just flew by. No, man, it was fun. Thanks for developing some magical items with us, everyone. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to Hoy for stopping by. Shout out to Zulfia for stopping by and giving us some great ideas. Shout out to Alex, guest of the stream, for stopping by and giving us some great ideas, and big ups to your daughter too.
I shall pass on her wonderful thing, and thank you for inviting me. It's been great fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Are we doing this same Valak time, same Valak channel next week?
Same Valak time, same Valak place next week. Yeah.
Nice, sounds good. All right, thanks guys for the stream and the magic items and the good times.
Yeah. Cheers, Kurt. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, later guys.